Welcome to Two Minds, One Mission, the podcast with bridge generations and expertise to level up your health, mindset and well-being across the board. I'm Derek Elder, we're here alongside our co-host Sharon Griffiths, and today we have a special guest on the episode, Scott Munn. We start chatting about Scott's journey into funeral directing from a young age, his personal sort of struggles with mental health, to starting up or helping start up Men with Issues, which is a local men's mental health group which has had a huge success over the last year, winning community awards and having to buy a new trophy cabinet. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. It's an absolute great one. There's loads of insights, and please make sure that you share this with a friend who might need to hear some of this too. Right, well, welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thanks very much,
to have you on, mate. Just first of all, just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So my name's Scott Munn. Been a funeral director for just over 20 years now.
Wow.
Came from Scotland's oldest independently owned family funeral business. So I'm the 12th generation in my family to be in that line of work. Started off washing the cars when I was a wee guy, building coffins, and just went for there. And now run my own business doing exactly that, funerals. It's all I've ever known.
Amazing, mate. How many times do you have to say that?
Loads, mate.
Loads. So smooth.
Absolutely.
No, superb. That kind of covers a bit of our first question then that we're kind of going to, like, where did it start for you? I know I've looked in your LinkedIn, your posts and that, like, you're very passionate about when you get started. I'm pretty sure you were 17, so tell us a bit about how that
It's quite young, isn't it, to be...
Aye, so growing up in the family business, we lived basically at the site where the business was, so going to school in the morning, I would go walk by a hearse and a coffin when I was a wee guy and just think nothing of it. It was totally normal to me, growing up in that environment. And then as I got a bit older and my pals started coming to the house, that was when I realised that maybe it wasn't quite as normal and not something that everybody else has experienced. So for a young age, it was just always that a given that I was going to get into the family business, and that's what I was going to do. But my start in it was a wee bit different. So to be honest, probably had a wee bit of a sense of entitlement, just thinking that I would always have a job. And I think it was the summer between me being in 5th year and 6th year, and I went to work for my dad. Everybody else had a job. I actually started off furnishing the coffins when I was still at school. So all my mates had a paper round at the time.
So you actually build the coffins on site?
Aye, well, we say that they come as a shell. So it's just like a wooden shell basically. So we would put the handles on them, line them with all the materials that are inside
Quite
them, and then the fabrics.
Aye, building them and things.
Definitely. But it's no like us actually building them from scratch, which some people
carpentry
think.
Working that out.
Used to be like that. Used to be like that years ago, but not now. So I used to do that, and I get £3 a coffin, and I could normally do 3 every day after school. So as I say, all my mates had a paper round earning like 15, 20 quid a week, and there was me building coffins and earning 40 quid a week. I was loaded. Aye. So summer holidays between 5th year and 6th year, I thought, right, I'll go in full time, give it a bash in the summer holidays. And I just went into the business and basically sat about, typical boss's son, no idea what I was doing, didn't really make much of an effort and never really tried to do much or get involved with much. Probably didn't understand the importance of what we did as a business then either. And I feel quite guilty saying that now, but I was almost embarrassed at the time looking back. Because everybody was a bit like, "You're what? You work in a funeral business? Big weirdo." And all that, is that kind of pattern at school, you know what it's like? Aye, totally. So I did that for a summer. My dad never cracked a light. Never said I did good, never said I did bad. He paid me every week. I turned up and that was it. And then I left school at the end of 6th year. And I went and said to him, right, I'm ready to come to work now. And he's like, you're not working for me. And I was like, what do you mean? I said, plan's knackered. Aye, exactly. Like, you need to give me a job. So he was like, no. I said, listen, you came in last summer, you sat about, you did nothing. Asked about your laptop, done hee-haw. I was like, he's kind of got a point, but I wasn't really wanting to admit that. So I went over to my mum at the house, and I remember saying to her at the time, listen, you'll need to go and speak to him. He's saying that he's not giving me a job.
Like, back up,
aye,
mum.
What's happening here? And then he came home that night and sat me down and had the conversation, and it was the biggest reality check that I've ever had, but it was needed as well. And he's like, listen, just because your name's above the door, it doesn't mean that you're entitled to a job there. He worked really hard in the business to get the business where it was at that point, worked for a number of years and started at the bottom. He's like, you go away and get a work ethic and show me that you can get a job elsewhere, he said, and then we'll consider looking at a job in the business for you. So I remember thinking at that point, oh no, like, what am I going to do here? Because I'd never mapped anything else out in my head and in my mind. I just always assumed that would be there and that's something that I would do. So I went and got a job cleaning cars. I worked for a guy as a valeter, so did that kind of 5 days a week. Also worked in British Gas at night, in a call centre in Uddingston. And then I worked in my other mate's car wash on a Saturday and a Sunday, so I ended up with 3 jobs, making really good money at the time for my age as well, but never had any time to spend it because I was just working all the time. But I was younger, didn't have any commitment, so it was doable then. And then that went on for I think about 6 months, and then my dad eventually said to me, like, listen, you know, you can come into the business now, you've proved your point.
So how important, sorry, was they 6 months for you? Like for your dad, was that like the morals that he taught you then?
Aye.
I think that's been key for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, Derek, 100%. And I mean, one of the businesses I'm involved in, we've got a team of over 50 staff. And even in there, I would not ask anybody to do anything that I can't do myself. And I think that was the whole purpose in that lesson. Just because of your surname doesn't entitle you to any position in the business. It doesn't mean I'm any better at doing anything than anybody else. So those lessons are lessons that I've hung on to my whole life. And applied them both in business and in my personal life as well, but massively important to me.
That's massive. And you said 12th generation as well. Like, see for you sitting here right now, how does that feel to know that you're 12th generation?
Aye, it's mad sometimes because like you talk to other people, especially in our sector, and a lot of the businesses are old, but they're maybe not that old. And okay, our business was sold, so we sold the business in 2011, but there isn't another family in Scotland that have been doing it for as long as we have.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a few across the UK that are slightly longer, but not many. So it's almost like a bit of pressure sometimes.
You'd covered my aunt's funeral on the 20th of December there at Daldowie, and her husband, your dad, did his funeral years ago.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? And like the service is beyond, to be honest. So you are community based, do you know what I mean? Because like there it's there. Your dad did my uncle's, and
Totally.
there you covered my aunt's just
Aye.
recently. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the generation for your dad to you now,
Totally.
and the standard is still as high as what it was with your dad. So your dad probably taught you that wee lesson back then to probably make you into who you are today. Do you know what I mean? So
Totally. And as I say, it's something I've carried with me, and we get loads of people like that, even that will come into my business now and say, like, your grandpa did a funeral for me 30 years ago, and then your dad did one for me 15 years ago, and here I am now, and it's the same family. So it's a privilege for me to be able to carry that on and continue looking after people, but you know, we care about what we do. That's the key thing. We really do.
That's like crazy trust, but to like a new
Aye.
level where it's like
100%.
trusted you with like 3-4 family members,
Yep.
and now you're here. It's like it's just
Aye.
a given. It's like,
But then that's the thing, if we do it right and the way people want us to do it, the idea is that we should always do it for them.
Yeah.
You should do it forever. You know, and that's the thing. I think if we care for a family once and we care for them in the right way, the idea is that, you know, inevitably they're going to be in that situation, unfortunately, again, that nobody wants to be in. But I want the families to know at the front of their mind that they come to me because they know that everything will be done right in the way it needs to be done.
Death of a family member is one of the hardest things that we've got to deal with. I'll never forget the time my uncle passed away, and we came to visit on site. You know, he was there and we were reviewing the body and things, and we went through, and my Aunt Jean was there, and my cousin Joe, and my Uncle Joe was a smoker, and he constantly like smoked a cigarette, put one out, smoke a cigarette, put one out, and you know, we were all crying and we were really upset, and we kind of clicked, like, he's not get his, Aunt Jean went, he's not get his cigarettes, do you think he'll be gasping? You know, that way. And we're all like that. I put his cigarettes, she said, I've got his cigarettes. We're like, put his cigarettes in with him. He'll be needing a fag now, like, and that broke it a wee bit. But then my Aunt Jean went a wee bit further and says, he'll need his lighter. And I was like, no, don't put it in.
Can't do that.
He's getting cremated. Well, I'll be sitting in the Daldowie, next will be a bag or something. Do you know what I mean? But it just took that wee moment, a break, to have that wee moment come through, do you know what I mean? And I've got to admit, your dad was amazing at that time and gave us the space and the time that we needed to, you know, deal with at that time, you know.
Definitely. I think that's the thing as well. For everybody, it's different. Whatever that space looks like and whatever that time looks like, it's not the same for any two families.
It's personal.
So it's understanding what that looks like, and it could be the completely opposite thing from one family to another. But it's been able to recognise that and just kind of trust the process and go with whatever they need, as long as it's legal, of course.
it's good though. It's like there is so much comfort in it because obviously it's a funeral and there's certain laws you abide by and stuff, but it is kind of like whatever the family wants to get. So it just takes so much comfort in them to know, like, this is what we want for this person. You can provide that and you can give it how they want that day to go. And something as simple as let's put the fags in the coffin. Do you know what I mean? That could mean so. You still remember that, so it must mean a lot for even such simple things. And do you get that a lot then?
Aye, we do. And I think letting a family know that it's all right to do those things as well, then that puts their mind at ease, because a lot of people come in and say, listen, I need to ask you something. Oh, I'm not really sure how to get about it. And it could be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, can we put 20 Mayfair in the coffin? Listen, if that's what you want to do, of course you can. And sometimes there's things we can't do for obvious reasons. You know, we can't put a litre of Jack Daniels in a coffin that's getting cremated. You know what I mean? But no, those wee things, it's understanding the importance of those little things for families, and then like the relief that they get from that, knowing that they're able to do that. The personal touches, they really do make a big difference. That's something I've learned throughout my career. And the importance of that will never go away for me, because it's so impactful in every family that we care for.
Aye, that's amazing. Like, we're always going to touch on it at the start there as well. We kind of went into, I probably didn't ask you the first question, but as you know, there's not really much structure to these anyway. We just kind of go and have a chat. But
sure.
Have a chat.
When me and Sharon were kind of talking, we're getting Scott on, and obviously our personal connection through doing my mum's funeral.
Totally, mate.
We've actually built a really good friendship for them as well. And
Absolutely.
When Sharon, I obviously didn't know about Sharon, and your uncle, and then it was like your dad had done it, and we're like, this is just an absolutely incredible guest for the podcast, and loads of connection there. But I think that's it, like through the point obviously losing my mum and stuff, and just how caring your business was for us, and it was that kind of like give us so much comfort. And I didn't obviously take much in what we wanted as such, because it was like I'm lost, you know what I mean? Managers are kind of dealing with a lot of that, and other family members, but it was just that the trust that you felt, and the care that you had, and it's a weird feeling, like being at the other side of it. Obviously for you, like it's your job as well, but it's a weird feeling, and it's like I knew of you but didn't know you, and then as soon as something like that happens, it's almost as if you've been in my life forever. And that just shows the impact of what the work that you do, and even just from you to like every single staff member you have got, the person that then drives the hearse, like it was just incredible, and I just want to obviously thank you for that as well, mate.
No, I appreciate that.
I speak really highly of you, and that just shows a connection that and the trust that you can then have with yourself.
Really appreciate that, and I think it's worth noting as well, for me, I always try, you know, it's maybe not the right thing to do all the time, but I always try and put myself in that person's shoes and look at that family and think, like, what would that be like? And you'll never know the answers until, unfortunately, you're in that position, you know, and it's something you've experienced firsthand, Derek, losing your mum. But I remember seeing at the time the way that you dealt with everything and the way that you dealt with the rest of your family, and genuinely, I took courage for that, because I thought it was incredible, because I always think, what would I do if it was me? And it's a bit kind of, I suppose it's maybe a wee bit like intrusive thoughts, you know, like you let them come into your head, and I think, imagine that was me there, standing on the other side of what I do. How would I feel? What would be going through my head right now? And I suppose it comes to the right place, because it's trying to get a better understanding of maybe what that person needs and what they want from you at that time. But I remember watching you and the way that you dealt with everything, and even the period after the funeral, and how you went on to carry yourself and go and do the things that you've done now. And I remember thinking, like, wow, like I wasn't lucky enough to know your mum personally, but I think you could say with confidence that she'd be proud of you and proud of everything that you're doing. So I think it's important to acknowledge that as well. I just want to say that, mate.
Thank you, mate. I can be emotional with that, to be honest, just to even hear that.
Aye.
But it's
actually, I remember you put a video together earlier this year. I think you put it on your TikTok and stuff, and I actually was like, can I use that? Because like, see, to be able to show other people how somebody's taking their grief and their pain and went on to do things. I think you would always have went and done the things that you've done to a degree, but I think you've used that as a motivator and a driver to make your mum proud.
Massively.
And it's amazing.
That TikTok video, actually, the audio removed, I was fucking raging.
Aye, because it was class with the song and that on it. Aye.
Something views, like, the audio removed. Still on Instagram, but that was that's definitely a key point, and definitely a turning point. Even from doing that video, the realisation I had throughout it, and how much it is. It's use it to at your advantage as such, you know what I mean? Because you can go one way where this happens to you and you just always live and being that victim all your life and never really do much with it. But it's like, that's the cards you've been dealt, and it's how can you actually use this to positively impact your life, leave a bit of a legacy, but then also help other people who's in a similar situation. And I think with me having that experience and never speaking about my story or never trying to help someone else, it's probably pretty selfish, because I could be the person that could absolutely change someone's life or change the way somebody looks at losing a family member, specifically losing a mum. And if I'm sitting here with that experience, that knowledge, and I know that I can use that to help somebody, and I don't, once again, it's like that's happened to me, and I've just lived in it. I've never actually used it to better myself or better someone else. So I think it's a massive turning point as well in my life. You mentioned there about how stepping into somebody's shoes, right? And like, it's not a dying industry, right?
No.
Say that in the car. I'll use that.
It's
not like
it. There's many funerals, and for each funeral, you're not going to give someone one service you wouldn't give another. So
Sure.
for everybody that comes through, you must always have a sense of stepping into somebody's shoes. How's that for you, mentally, emotionally, personally?
Aye, it's hard sometimes. I think it comes with the job to a degree. And if you want to do the job to the extent that I do, where I'm connected with every family that I care for, and there's a connection there in some way. And for some families, they deal with it a bit differently. So it's maybe just a bit more of a transactional thing, where they need to arrange a funeral and I'm the person they come to, and that's what we do. And then there's other people that we care for that we end up becoming part of that family for a period of time. Sorry, excuse me. I was just pure running. For some of those families, we become almost like integrated with them, and as I say, it's like we're living through it with them for that period of time. It's never disingenuine, but it's just measured on, as I say, what each person needs, and some families need that from us and they allow us to get that connection, and other people are a wee bit more guarded with things. But when you do get a better understanding of what they're going through and what they're dealing with, and that sometimes makes it harder. You carry it a bit more and you want to do a bit more to help them and support them, but sometimes people are grieving and they're going through that journey, and you just need to respect that and allow them to go through it. But you know, certain circumstances are more tragic than others, and sometimes it's harder to switch off in those scenarios. Unfortunately, looking after like children, kids, things like that. Being a parent myself, even more so, you know, it's difficult to go home at night and switch off for that. It really is.
Because it's not just the families that you're dealing with the actual person themselves.
Absolutely.
Whose funeral it is. So it's like all those things that you've got to deal with as well. So it must take a toll at some point. How do you cope?
Do you know, it's funny, I'm often asked, like, how do you switch off? And I don't think I ever do. But I think, again, it's maybe similar to what we were speaking about using that and kind of fueling me and help me be a better person and who I need to be for those families. But it's difficult to cope sometimes because, you know, I can go home at night and think, oh, I've had a hard day. But I'm then thinking of the family that I spoke to a few hours ago that have maybe lost their child.
Yeah.
You know, and I know they're having a harder day than I am. And they're dealing with a lot more than I am. So I suppose it's just trying to keep it in perspective a lot of the time.
But do you think then you kind of disregard your own feelings?
Sometimes I've definitely been guilty of that in the past, 100%.
A lot of people come to me just now, and if they're having a hard week or if they've just went through something, because they know my story and my situation and how obviously tragic it was, and mum being so young and having a young family and that, they almost go, oh, I've been through this and this is what's happened to me, but I know this has happened to you, so my situation's nowhere near as worse as yours. But then it's like, again, I always say back to them, I wouldn't just go and take that and go, oh, I know what you're moaning at. But I go like, well, your situation is the hardest thing you've ever experienced. You cannot compare my situation to yours because you don't know how mine feels.
Exactly.
If you stub your toe, that could be the hardest thing that's happened in your fucking life. You might have a pretty sweet life. So you cannot go, you've lost your mum because you don't know how it feels. So see if you go and stub your toe, mate, just go with it. Go, by the way, that was hard, man. I really struggled there. Do you know what I mean? My toe's bleeding. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, that's your situation. So don't compare it. And just your feelings are so valid for where you're at as well. So
Totally. And I think it's like we see that with people that maybe something will upset them. And it could be something really daft. Like we could be speaking about something to do with arrangements and somebody the next minute breaks down, they're bawling their eyes out and they're apologising. I'm like, listen, don't apologise. Because if I always say to people in any sense in life, I feel if it's a thing for you, it's a thing. And it's like you say, it could be stubbing your toe and you could be comparing to somebody who's had to get their toe cut off. But if stubbing your toe is a thing for you, it's a thing for you.
Absolutely.
And you need to acknowledge that.
It is 100%, and that's obviously difficult for you as well when you do disregard your feelings because you are living in it. You know what I mean, it's not as if it's something that passes for you, because if it's that one, that feeling that you disregard for yourself, it could be the day after, where it then happens to someone else has passed, you're dealing with a family, you go home again, you can't get to feel yourself. So have you found that been a thing that's kind of been a big constant in your life then? And
I would say so. I would say so. Something I've tried to work on a lot more recently, and acknowledging and understanding a bit more sometimes how heavy that can be, carrying that as well. Whereas I think traditionally, especially in our sector, it was a male dominated sector for a long time as well, and it was just like the pull your socks up brigade, get on with it, it's part of the job. If you do that job, then you need to be able to deal with all that. But in actual fact, being human and having an understanding of the weight of that helps you connect with people a bit better and maybe have a better understanding of who they are and what they need from you. And I know I keep saying that, but it's so true to what we do. So it's something I've used to try and get a bit better at processing and understanding myself and what that's like for me. But probably still a lot of work to be done there, I would say.
Would you say that's, like, obviously, we're going to touch on this as well, but with men with issues starting, would you say that's been the thing that's kind of drove you into obviously playing a big part there?
Aye, definitely. I think initially Kieran and Danny started the group. I went along with the intentions of just going along to help out. And then actually sometimes you go into a room with other guys and you put yourself in the spotlight. I was like, I never intentionally set out to take more, but I ended up probably in the first period taking a lot more than I was ever able to give to anybody else. But it was a real kind of eye-opener and an experience for me to get, again, an understanding and a perspective on where I was at.
I was going to say, was that personally? It was
Aye,
an eye-opener for you.
definitely.
Did you find that you were actually recognising more about yourself as you were going along, as it started to begin?
100%. And that's how after the initial period, I was like, I want to get involved and I want to do more. And I want to help, because it was just so powerful for me to almost have the light shone on yourself a wee bit. And kind of go, actually, wait a minute, could be doing me working on that and that and that, you know. Sometimes you're not quite as mentally resilient as you might think you are.
Yeah.
You know.
And you done that. You messaged me as well, and you're like, "I'd love for you to come to the group and tell your story."
Yep.
And I came and told my story because I thought that was a thing I was doing for someone else, and I like to do stuff for other people. So the way you approached that, I don't know if you've deliberately done that, by the way. Right? So it was like, come along and share your story. You're gonna help some of the guys.
Happened to me.
Aye. So that's what happened to you. So you'll help some of the guys. So I went, brilliant, man. Let's go and help people. And I was there in that room, and I obviously told my story in front of, I think it's about 20 guys at the meeting or something. And I left there and I went, they've actually done so much for me than what I'd done telling that story. Yep. And I went back week after week and kept going. And I didn't actually realise that it started breaking things inside me down and allowing me to understand it, because I genuinely thought I was going to help somebody else. And obviously I did, but it helped me more than I ever. That's the first time I'd ever told my story. And I said that to the guys as well. I'd only ever told wee bits yet if I'd had a few drinks and I was in somebody's kitchen at that point in time. Do you know what I mean? And you start telling wee bits, but I went completely like with all intention. I tell my story, help other people, and it helped me massively. I'd done the same a few weeks ago when I was in the NLP course. I mean, I'm going to do the NLP course, going to be great for clients, psychotherapy, all that sort of stuff. And I went and I cried 3 or 4 times within that week on the course. And that was for me again. So I think that's it's probably a good way to get people help who necessarily want to help other people. So as you said, you can't say no, you want to do it for other people. So if somebody framed to you, right, this is for you, Scott. You know what I mean? And it ends up getting you back.
100%.
Yeah.
And so it's so powerful, and like so many people that have came to the group and shared, I've had that experience as well. Where it's like, you know, you're coming with the benefit of sharing your experience, but then you open a door in that room. And it's like people always say, what's it like? And the only way you can explain it is by saying you can't explain it. You need to come and experience it in the room, which you've experienced firsthand, Derek, when you came and did that. And I knew that your story, particularly your approach and your mindset and how you've dealt with all that, would be so powerful to the other people in the room. Because some of the guys are in that room because they can't deal with the grief they're experiencing. They're struggling to cope. For somebody who's had it to the extent that you've had to go and do what you've done would be amazing. But at the same breath, there's never not anybody who does that and doesn't get back as well. And that's not why you're there. That's not why you're doing it. But you can't deny that happens. And it's amazing to see.
Aye, that was powerful, definitely.
Yeah.
For you, like, no sort of top tip stuff, right? But if someone came to you and they were really struggling with grief and they didn't have anything like that before Men with Issues started,
sure,
and they came to the funeral directors, someone had passed, who else would they ask except from the funeral director? What do you give to someone in that situation? So
I think I probably benefit from having the experience from the group as well. But if you're speaking about maybe somebody who's not familiar with that environment, I would always encourage a conversation. Speaking about somebody, I think everybody's kind of guilty sometimes of when those emotions and those feelings appear. They don't know how to deal with them, so we tend to have a habit of suppressing them, putting them in a box and shutting them away. And it might be the right thing to do in your head in that moment, but longer term, I think we probably everybody would agree that you can't do that forever.
It starts to come out, yeah.
It does.
It has to come out in some sort of way.
So true, Sharon.
Grief is one of the hardest things in the world to deal with. My dad passed last year, and for this past year and a half, I've been dealing with it not too bad. No. But it's starting to trigger me in certain things now. And I'm starting to realise that that's it. It's starting to come out in different ways. You know, there's no time scale on death. And plus, it's also a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about as well. Because it's a scary subject. It's a scary subject that we know for certain it's going to happen to everybody. You know, it's something that we know for definite. It's the only thing that we know for definite in this world that's going to happen is that we are going to pass at some time. So it does become quite a scary subject. So how do you get people to open up?
I think, so we try and go beyond the practical things that we need to discuss, because obviously when you're talking about a funeral, there's practical elements that are things that are going to have to happen. You're going to need to decide where a funeral is.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pick a coffin. But what we try and do is let that conversation extend to being a celebration of somebody's life, in a way to include certain things, memorise things. And I suppose it comes back to having the conversations about the personal touches that matter, and some of the things that we do for people.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we had a family who went to... Sorry.
Oh, well, I did not realise. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so sorry.
We had a family recently who, it was a couple that passed, a gentleman that passed away, and him and his wife, the couple, would always go to Blackpool. Go to Blackpool all the time. So through the conversation, that came up, that was something that I liked to do. So one of our guys had went off his own back on the Saturday, jumped into the car, and the couple would always sit on the beach at Blackpool, 2 deck chairs, and look at the tower. Used to do it like once a month. He went down to Blackpool off his own back on a Saturday and filled a box up with sand for Blackpool Beach. And when the family came into view, he had the sand from the beach in Blackpool in the viewing room, and 2 wee deck chairs and a picture of the Blackpool Tower up. And see for that, then what that then did for the family was it opened up that conversation. Now, it was probably an overflowing of grief and emotion coming out in that room at the time. But I know for a fact for that family, we started that process. And I don't mean we personally take credit for that, but that moment allowed them to go down that journey and kind of open that door. And so for me, like, things like that are really important to address grief, because again, as I say, so many people just think, I don't know how to deal with that, I put it away. Or it's like the practical approach where they don't have time to deal with that because we're dealing with the funeral, but we're dealing with the funeral for them. And that's to allow families to have that time. So I always encourage the conversation. You know, if that means crying, bawling your eyes out, do that. If that means getting angry and punching a hole in the wall, I'm not saying do that, but if that's what you need to do to get by that moment, do it, let it out, and then understand it and be aware of it. And that, what does that look like for people? It differs in every case, but trying to have an understanding and an awareness of grief and what it can be, I think puts you in a better position to deal with it. But as you both know, it's not something that happens overnight. There's no time frame to it. It doesn't come at certain times of the day and go away at certain times of the day. It hits you when it hits you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Special with that sand thing. That's above and beyond. That would help someone out a lot, by the way.
Yeah,
I said somebody's going to cry, but I think I'm going to cry. That is so special.
Things that we do, like we do things like that all the time, so we're constantly listening to try and hear if there's something specific for a family that we could maybe do. And we looked after a wee soul that passed away long before she should have done earlier this year, and the family said that she really liked sunflowers. So we managed to get sunflowers to put through our coffin, and we all wore sunflower ties on the day of the funeral, and we even changed the ambient lighting in the cars to yellow because that was our favourite colour. So again, things like that are an acknowledgement to me, you know, and that's not about us just sitting and saying, oh, look at us, this is what we do.
That's a specific
It's about
touch.
connecting. Yeah, it's about connecting with the people, but then understanding that through us, out with the practical elements about what we need to do as a funeral director for them, it's helping people understand and acknowledge their feelings and what does that look like, the memories of that person, how do they keep them alive, what do they do.
So that isn't about the colour, it isn't about the sunflower, it's not about the tie, it's not about doing it, it's the feeling that you get from it and the comfort and the connection. That's the special part. It's not Scott wore a yellow tie, it's the feeling that you gave that person by doing that thing, which is amazing. And you touched on grief as well, and that's the thing, like I've had a couple of people who's messaged me and it's like, I know you've lost your mum, like I've just lost this person, how do you grieve? And I'm like, there's no rule book to grief.
How long's a bit of sling? You know what I mean?
Like, your grief could be when you're laughing, that's grieving. When you're sad, that's grieving. When you maybe pick up a drink that you maybe shouldn't have that day, that's grieving. If you go away and you hide in a box, don't speak to anyone, that's grieving. If you tell a joke, that's grieving. And people will be like, you're not meant to laugh, or you're not meant to tell a joke, or then you feel guilt from being happy. But it's all grief, every single part of it.
100%, mate.
Grief
So
could
true.
be 6 months as well for somebody, and then they don't. But grief could be a lifetime. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't end. And for
There's no time limit on it at all.
That's the hard part, because people like to know how something's going to be.
It's the not knowing and not being in control. And that's the thing. When I get people coming in, like at Christmas there, so we do a memorial tree every year, and people can come in and hang baubles in memory of their loved one and stuff like that. And a lady came in and we'd looked after her husband about 6-7 months ago, and she's been doing great, and she just came in and just broke down. And again, like, she's apologised and all that, but it's obviously being in that environment again has triggered something for her, which can happen as well.
Yeah.
And it was an outpouring of grief from her in that moment. But again, it's like, we'll sit down and let it out. If you need to sit in here and cry for 20 minutes, then that's what you do. Because you're right, there's no rhyme or reason for it. There's no way of controlling it. And I think it's the unknown that makes people fearful. And that's why the tendency is to shut it away rather than try and address it.
Rather than talk about it.
Absolutely. Like we know, it does tend to seep out eventually.
Yeah.
And for me, I think if you're in control of when it's coming out a bit more, then exactly that, you're in a bit more control.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's definitely a strange feeling when you're going through it, do you know what I mean? And the reason that we're chatting about this again, and this wasn't obviously the reason for getting you in the podcast to sit and talk about grief the full time, but what we found from the last couple of podcasts, it's been a thing that's come up again, but it's also been the thing that's had big personal messages sent to us from someone going, what you said there has really helped me, and that's made me understand these emotions or these thoughts that I was having. So every time you chat about this, there's going to be something that comes up that resonates with somebody that's going through grief. So that's why I think it's so powerful. But going through those days, they do feel cloudy. You can't really see. It's almost as if you're in a false world, and the world's moving really, really fast, but you're going really, really slow.
Yeah, the world keeps moving, and you're kind of like, why is it not stopped? When you're going through your grief, you know, in a way, you kind of like, the world keeps moving. And in a way, the fear kicks in where you're like, I need to get back on out there and move with the world in a way as well. Do you know what I mean?
It's weird. And then for a lot of people, it can become a lot, like, there's resentment. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of feelings because it's like, why me? And it's something everybody experiences.
It's really hard for us when we, like, families come in with that total kind of despair, and they will maybe break down and just sometimes they ask us, why is this happening to me? You know, why? Because we do, unfortunately, deal with a lot of people who have lived a full life, and, you know, it's been their time. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, when it's not, when you look at it, and people say when it's your time, it's your time. And I'm a firm believer in that. Like, you know, whatever way the world works, when that's going to happen, it's going to happen. I don't think MD can really intervene with that, but it doesn't make it any easier for the people that are going through that. And when it happens to somebody long before it should, it's difficult. And again, those are questions that we can never answer. You know, and it's hard to be in that position when somebody's asking you, why is this happening to me? You know, because there's no answer for that.
Yeah, and they're looking for that answer that you just can't give them at that time, you know. So the challenges that you do at your work and things like that, do you find that that's, well, obviously we've kind of touched on the men with issues thing, so I want to kind of get back to that. I want to talk about men with issues part of it. How it started for you. How did it really begin? When I know you kind of opened up and realised that, you know, oh, hold on a minute, there's things here that I didn't realise. Like, how did that make you feel when you started really getting into it and you attached more to the situation? Like, how did you end up opening up your funeral place for the meetings to be held and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. I think it's a bit of a kind of like euphoric journey, like, see, going through that process. So, like, it's almost like stepping outside yourself and not being there.
Yeah,
you know, and looking in and actually, because I've never really reflected on everything that's happened in life before, and I've been through a lot myself in my younger years and stuff, and struggled with my mental health over the years, but never really actually sat down and kind of analysed that. And going to the group, that really gave me the tools, I suppose, to do that. But then at the same time, it's that moment of sort of realising and accepting, well, actually, I've been through quite a lot. There's a couple of times in my life that have been quite shitty. And then factoring in what I do for a job as well, and the sort of trauma I feel like that's came with that over the years. I mean, the company that bought our family business over years ago, they had the contract for doing all the police work. So I was involved with the recovery of the remains, so like the Clutha, the bin lorry crash, which was just the anniversary of the other week there, things like that. And that at the time, again, it was just like you kind of get on with that, and you just, you know, that was your job, and it is what it is. And we were actually speaking in the office last week, a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, towards the end of this year, we've had a lot of really, really, really tragic circumstances. And I think everybody in the business has felt it, you know. It's part of the job and you accept it. But when you get it consistently for quite a while, it wears people down, you know. So I suppose I'd carried years of that, and again, just sort of accepted it. Just going to the group and looking at that, it's like, actually, wait a minute, that's maybe had an impact on me.
See, if someone says something at the group or that though, and they'll say something you've never even thought of that's also happened to you, and you see the way they've reacted to it and how upset that's got them, that then makes you think as well, is that how I should have been feeling, or is that something I've not unpacked yet?
Totally.
See, just to touch on, obviously it impacts all the staff as well. Is there something that you like have in place where the staff do chat together about a certain situation if it's really extreme?
So we've encouraged like a real, particularly over the past year, and again, definitely thanks to my involvement with the group as well. Clarity and perspective, as I keep saying, massive. So understanding, like we're really guilty in our sector, and I think every funeral business in the UK will be the same. Where like that's what you do. You're a funeral director, so of course you're going to deal with grief, of course you're going to deal with death, but there's certain circumstances that are really difficult to deal with, like I say. So over the past year, we've really focused on that. Mental health awareness, mental health first aid training for the staff, but we also encourage the conversation with the staff as well. So if we've got somebody in a particular office that's maybe dealt with a really difficult or tragic situation, we encourage them within the boundaries of respecting the family and confidentiality and things, but to discuss that with a colleague, reach out to somebody. And there's certain people appointed in the business, myself being one of them, that people can come to and speak to if they're struggling or they have an issue. There's also a couple of external resources that are specific to our sector, but that we have as well that the staff can utilise if they're struggling. And I think I would say over the past year, we've seen a lot more people actually come forward, which to me is great. Don't want them to be in that position, but the fact that they're acknowledging it and coming forward, having the conversation, it's massive, you know.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you're providing that for your staff, because it must be one of the most difficult jobs, I would imagine, in the world to deal with, you know.
I remember working for that company I was speaking about, and when we did some of those major incidents and we were caring for those people, after it we got offered counselling, but the same company would do that across the city every day, you know, all the time. So you could be going to somebody that had maybe been murdered, you could be going to somebody that was in a road traffic accident, you could be going to a suicide, and we were never ever offered anything. And I remember at the time when we got that offer of counselling, being really offended by it, because we were only offered it because of the high profile nature of those incidents. And it was traumatic at the time dealing with all that, but I remember kind of thinking, of all the things that we do every day, there'd be teams of guys and girls out there going to attend murders and all these different things every week. So some of the things they would see were horrific, and there was never any sort of offer on that or offer of support in that sense up until that point.
How far has it moved on then from, obviously it's generational here, right? So what funeral directing looks like now compared to what your dad seen as a funeral director compared to what his dad seen, or however far down the line it goes, not due to like the deaths change, because they're always going to be the same or around the same lines, but the mindset shift of what or the way you would deal with it mentally now compared to maybe your granddad completely disregarded it and went, this is what I do and this is my life.
So true, and it's exactly like that. But I think that kind of, on the flip side of that, is how clients perceive it as well. So back in my grandpa's day, somebody would go to a funeral director to arrange a funeral, nothing more. They wouldn't mention grief. You wouldn't cry in front. I mean, obviously you go into a house maybe where somebody had passed away and everybody would be upset and all that, but there would never be that extension of that relationship back then. So I suppose the expectation at the time would marry up with how it was perceived by the funeral director, whereas now it's like we're integrated with the family in that period of time, so it's so different. But I think that's mirrored on both what client expectation is as well as what we offer now as well.
It's pretty crazy that, but when you think back to like how we now deal with it compared to what generations previous to us dealt with
totally.
It, and you wonder if it was, obviously mental health has always been a thing, it's just never ever been unpacked, or it's never really been looked at, or it's not even been a word in certain generations, you know what I mean? So then it's like, well, it doesn't exist.
To be honest, it wasn't a word when I was younger.
No.
Because, you know, I mean, like back in the 70s, that wasn't even like a word used, to be honest. People, like, you wouldn't think somebody had mental health issues. It never get mentioned at all. Do you know what I mean? It was accepted. It was accepted what people were and what they did. It was just, they've just got, you know, a wee illness or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
They're having a bad day.
They're having a bad day. How'd you get here a bad day? Oh, come on, we'll go to the pub. Come on, we'll get a drink. Oh, my mates are there, I'll be fine, and things like that. And plus, a lot of men back in the day then, especially looking back in my dad's day, my dad would never cry or anything like that. You just got up and you got on with it. You know,
it's that pull your socks up,
you know, you just got to get on with things. You've not, you know, that happened, you get on with it.
And that's it. The layers of life keep packing on top of each other, but there's like all this trauma that's in between every single layer, but then never ever gets dug
Never
into.
gets unpacked.
Up again.
No.
So, but the thing is, like, now that mental health is a thing and it's a word that obviously is put about now, that people are more aware of it. What I'm tending to find is that it's now having the opposite effect for some younger guys, which is very, very difficult, because maybe the guys round about what I'm tending to find is about 30, 40s, they're actually starting to realise, right, there's people above that who are maybe at the era where you're speaking about here, where they still don't speak about it because it's scary.
Totally.
And there's younger guys, even younger now, who are going through school, who don't speak about it because it's something to be laughed about. Because it's like, oh, what you talking about, what's up with you, or mental health and all that. So it's like, everything's still so separated. It's not like consistent or congruent throughout every generation. It's like, we don't speak about it. We've now realised, and we start speaking about it and get help. Younger guys, let's laugh about it.
It's so true. And I think I was reading something a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about, it was like a cycle that we went through where there was a focus on it, and it was really good because there was awareness, but then there was this kind of negative effect where it was overused to label at times. And then what was happening is people are then reluctant to speak up now, because they think even if they might have something up with them or something that needs looked at, they need to speak to somebody, but people are then going to say, okay, because everybody says there's something wrong with their mental health now. And that to me is a knock-on effect to exactly what you're talking about. And there's no denying the generational side of that. I think it's a massive thing. Some of the environments that we've went into with the group to speak to people, whether it be a workplace or whatever it may be, you can't deny the fact. And the fact is that older generation are very much less receptive of even the thought of having a conversation with somebody. I was in an environment, it wasn't through the group or anything, but where I was speaking to people about mental health, and one guy had spoke to me about the fact that he had no issues at all with his mental health, but in the same conversation he went to go on to tell me that he'd planned out on how he would take his own life. And I was thinking, and he was saying in light of an event happening, this is what he would do. And we were able to refer that individual to get external support, because I felt that's what was needed. But that happening in the same conversation where you're saying you don't have an issue with your mental health, but here's a means to an end almost. I was kind of like...
It's like he wasn't recognising.
No, it's totally normal.
It's normal.
Yeah.
It's like you say, I know what depression looks like, so I've seen one that had depression.
Aye.
Depression is completely different to your
Exactly.
depression.
What does that look like?
Aye.
Do you know what I mean?
Aye. He's depressed. I know what depression looks like, and I've not got that because I've not got what he's got.
It's like depressed as if you don't do anything, you don't work.
Yeah.
But I go to my work, so I'm not depressed.
Aye. And I think it is...
That's a functioning depression.
Aye. But I think it's encouraging to see younger people. It's definitely something that's spoke about a bit more often. But you're right, the other side of that is it's something else at school that, can be poked fun at. It can be, dressed up as something else. And that's where, I think we need to be really careful as a society in general, where we do the right things now going forward, especially for the younger kids, because the things I hear and see of happening at schools now, it's horrific compared to the stuff that happened, like, the bullies, if you want to call them, or stuff that happened when I was at school. It was bad, but it wasn't anything like it is now. So I think we need to be careful as a society in general where what we do and how we support people.
It's a realisation I've had from school as well, because being in that school environment, being in a group of boys, and the jokes get thrown about, and it was just always that thing is, he can't take a joke or something like that if something really bad was said. Which was, now if you've probably thought about some of the things that are said, you're like, fucking hell.
Aye, that was really bad, man.
Aye. Actually say that to me. And it's like, it's completely disregarded, and then if you can't take that joke, or if you don't give the joke back, or if then you bite at a joke, you get it even harder and it gets piled on top of you. Whereas I see if I witnessed that now instead of being in it, I'd want to intervene. And that isn't normal, but it was completely normal when you were in it.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think there's still probably, with the kids coming through now, a bit of a culture where they still won't want to intervene because nobody really wants to be that guy. Yeah. And that's the problem. Do you know what I mean? We need more people wanting to be that guy because it's not right, let's be honest.
Imagine all the jokes we're going about, right? And then somebody comes in and goes, watch, that might affect his mental health. It's like, what the fuck you talking about?
Exactly. Shut up.
And then
he gets it.
Totally. And that's unfortunately what would happen in some environments still, even today.
Because these people are so unaware of the effect it can have.
Totally.
Which is hard. And I think that's where it's going forward. It needs to start there. This is where, as going into the schools as such, this is where it needs to start.
That's something that's close to my heart. And again, because of what I do, we've had a few recently this year, looked after some people who have taken their own life, and they've taken their own life due to bullying. And for me, that was a real, again, as a parent myself with kids at home, to imagine a child, let's say a child being in a situation where it's that bad that that's their only option. And I think to myself, like, wow, you know, I don't think I was particularly thick-skinned at school. I never had that much of a hard time either, though. But for somebody to be in that mindset where that's
the last resort.
The last resort. It must be horrific. And again, that to me highlights even more that, you know, there has to be so much more done there. And that's why through the group as well, we're trying to go into as many schools as we can, speak to some of the pupils, give them a bit of perspective, a bit of lived experience, some of the things that we've been through, because they tend to respond a bit better to that. You know, I think that's why we're successful with the group in that sense, because we're not sitting with a white cloak on and a clipboard across the table. We don't have a degree. Yep. It's guys with lived experience that have actually been there and actually really done the things that some of these kids are doing right now, or been at the receiving end of some of those things.
That's
you can say to them.
We experience your own generation and what you did growing up as well. It's passing on that knowledge that you've got now.
Definitely.
I find with, like, my clients, that bullying thing too, like the clients that I've got now, they'll say certain things, and in my head I'm like, I would maybe not say it to them in that sense, you were being bullied, but sometimes they get way back to when they were 10-year-old and they still remember now at the age of 40, 50, one thing that was said to them of one person in school, and remember the exact situation. Think how big that impact that's had, and now behaviours that they have now after going through the NLP and that psychotherapy. I'm starting to piece a lot of this together with things they're saying. So, like, for example, not going to give a specific example, but a few weeks ago, having a conversation with a client, they're saying things, they're then reverting back to when they're 10-year-old. This thing was said, and I've pieced together full time, I've been coaching them, and this situation ended up linking into so many different problems, all because this thing was said in a way in which they now go about their day-to-day life. Maybe the clothes that they wear, maybe a way in which they approach a situation, maybe the fact that if they're in a group of 6 people, they don't speak, but if it's a group of 2 people, they're the loudest. So it's things like that, just because this one thing was said. Do you know what I mean? They wore this one thing before, and it could even be parents that then said something to them. And then that's just their full life, then affects relationships, which then causes breakdown and a lot of different family issues because one thing was said. And it's crazy how much an impact that one thing can then have.
It's going to affect the rest of your life.
Totally, and then you carry that with you. And it's like you say, it's a factor in things that they're maybe doing 20, 30, 40 years later.
Crazy.
We had a guy come to the group, Brian from Headstrong.
He's done the NLP course,
so he came and did a lot of work with the guys on you know, trauma, etc., and it was amazing. Like, I think a lot of the guys really realised that dialing back, and it, like you say, Derek, one comment, one moment, something that was said is actually been a factor in the path that they've ended up going down. And again, not having any awareness of that, so it's then when you look back and you're able to go, wait a minute, and you can then start addressing it and doing something about it.
It explains so much in your life.
100%.
Addressing this one situation. I don't know what techniques Brian obviously done on the retreat, but like we done one that was timeline therapy. We also done one called Sanctuary, but the timeline was getting back into a past moment. And I've actually not even said this to you, and I said it in the last podcast, but essentially I'll need to actually say it again. But it's really, really relevant. So the timeline therapy in which we done is you go back to your past self as such, right? So, for example, someone could go back to their 7-year-old self. For me, it was my 19-year-old self. So we were back in time, the emotions that I was feeling at that point in time, and it was standing at the front of the crematorium, looking at the coffin, and I was broken-hearted, crying, didn't know what my purpose was, because a lot of my purpose was my mum, the things I wanted to do for her, the life I wanted to give her, and the way I kind of showed up as well. Do you know what I mean? So I lost all that, and that's why I always speak about purpose a lot, because I completely lost my purpose. I didn't know how I could go on. I wouldn't have took my own life, although I probably thought about it a couple of times, but the reason I couldn't is because I had siblings, because I had family, I knew the knock-on effect. So it was like, right, what do I do? And I felt as if I lost everything. How could I go on? And I had to find my purpose again. But at that point in time, standing there broken-hearted, of course, and we done timeline therapy, so I'm back to that point in time with the skills, the attributes, the morals, the purpose I've all got now, and the things that I can then teach this boy at 19. So obviously it's only 2 years on, but I went back, and it's crazy how much you can actually imagine it. And I'm standing at the front of the crematorium with the 19-year-old me and 21-year-old me, and I'm having a conversation with them. Sounds mental. Having a conversation, and I basically told them that everything was going okay, you'd find your purpose again. Look at me now, I've got a big smile on my face. And it was like Brian said to me, give him a gift. And you're like, at that point, what sort of gift do you give him? And this could have been maybe a skill or an attribute or something I've got now, or like something physical. So I gave him the gift of a parachute, right? But I didn't give any context with the parachute. So at that point in time, the 19-year-old me is in turned around like, what the fuck is this?
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? Why have you gave me a parachute? Then he started laughing back to me. So now he's happy, and then I go on my way. And I basically, the one thing I said to him was like, this is going to save you. Parachute obviously saves people, but it was because I knew that I'd booked the skydive for the 2-year anniversary of Mum's death. But this 19-year-old me still doesn't know. But he's always going to hold on to that parachute, curious.
Yep.
So I turned a memory I didn't want to forget. And this was the one that if I thought about Mum or that situation, that was the point in time it made me cry.
Sure.
Look at the coffin, and it was when the curtains closed. That was like, the emotion hit again,
Aye.
double. And now when I think back to that memory, I don't think of the crying. I think me standing with a parachute,
Aye.
and still suited and booted,
Yeah.
Totally.
with a parachute, and laughing and smiling. And it's like, that is how powerful a technique that can be.
And it is powerful stuff, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And obviously, like, if that 19-year-old me seen 21-year-old me with a parachute, he must go, right, well, he's there's something here, he's doing something.
Aye.
I'm going to be at a point where this is going to be relevant. And then business in a great spot. I've done really well over the last wee while. Now booked a skydive to face a fear, but the clients that I'm going to be doing it with on the 2 years anniversary of Mum's death.
Yeah.
Like, it's unimaginable.
Aye.
And it just
Amazing.
shows you how powerful a technique like that can be. And now that's took trauma and sadness into something that's happy and more positive.
Totally. And I think if more people had that awareness, or even the skills to be able to look at life like that, even just begin that journey, it's incredible stuff. And that's what maybe steers people away from being in the situation that unfortunately some people do find themselves in, when everything just gets too much. And it's hard, it's really hard to get out of that spot once you get into it.
He said to me, "You doing the skydive?" And I was like, "I'll hold your jacket." I was like, "No chance." And then he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "I'm terrified of heights. I've got vertigo." All these excuses all started coming.
Aye.
Guess what? I'm doing the skydive.
Aye, sign me up. Go
Come in, you got me, boys.
You should actually add some people on, but they've not get back to you.
Aye.
They're ignoring us.
I'll
be us too.
You're hoping you can't get added on.
This sounds like a repeat of our last podcast.
I know. I know. What I wanted to ask you though, Scott, was like, all the awards, you've won awards there, haven't you?
Aye.
Tell me how you feel about that.
Aye, so it's never what I do it for. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
Listen, I know that's the best thing I like about you, Scott, is that you're a genuine boy for our area, do you know what I mean? And you've stepped into a place, like through this podcast, you kind of said that you had mental health issues yourself, and you kind of opened up a bit about that, and that's what it is about for you. You kind of get to the community, not for what you get back, but it's the achievement that you're gaining them. It's the knowledge of what you've went through that you're gaining to them. Do you know what I mean? So you deserve these awards when they're coming back at you like this. Do you know what I mean? Well done.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's people probably laugh. They're like, you get an award for being a funeral director. It's a thing now. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
No, I mean, again, I feel like I can say with confidence, I know we deserve it, because the things we do, I know every time I'll go above and beyond.
Yeah.
I'll go above and beyond, and whatever that looks like. As I say, that could be nothing for one person and then something for somebody else, but like it's whatever it needs to be in that moment. And I think for me, the skill set comes to understanding that and understanding what that is. So it might not always be going to Blackpool and getting a box of sand.
Yeah.
It might just be changing the colour of your tie. It might just be going past the favourite pub. It might be, the difference between somebody getting what they want and need and what they think they can get and they want and they need, So it's important for me, and I'll always do things like that, but then at the same time it's nice to be recognised as well.
That's
and it's not just me, it's the team, it's everybody behind me as well, and everything that they do, the work they do. I know they care as much as I do, and even I say this all the time, even on the worst days they'll still go out and give a family 10 out of 10. We could have a screaming match in the office before we go out about something totally different, but when they go out in that funeral, we do everything we can collectively to make sure that the person that we're caring for is, everything's done right by them, but also by their family as well. And the stuff for the group, like, we were just blown away with that. The group's only been going, it'll be a year on the 16th of January.
Yeah.
So again, to get recognised, Evening Times Community Champion, it was incredible. I don't think we expected to win. Then we didn't. And then just obviously on the night, getting the award, we were up against some really amazing groups, amazing community projects that do a lot of really good work. But I suppose when you're living in it and you're doing it all the time, we don't really, particularly Kieran and Danny, like they don't really realise what they created by starting that group. And that's just their nature. Again, they don't do it for any other reason other than to help people. But even they don't understand the space that they've created to provide other people with the tools to get better. It's amazing. So we've had to buy a bigger award cabinet for this year. So
a wee collection.
No, and then we got also this year we got the South Lanarkshire Council Community Award as well, for supporting some local charities and stuff like that. So, but I think it's amazing, the power of connection and working with different people, and genuinely it's like what I do, you know, it's not like I'm Arnold Clark, where if I sponsor your football team, then you might not really need a new motor, but you think, oh, listen, by the way, you know, sponsor the football team, we'll go and see him. I don't ever want anybody to need me, you know. So what we do these things to be part of the community, and of course you want to be at the forefront of somebody's mind if unfortunately they have a bereavement. But there's no direct exchange in business or anything. It's never like that. It's not why we do anything that we do. But then, like, one of the charities that we do a lot of work with support families locally at Christmas, and they went to see a family to donate some presents. The family unfortunately were falling under really hard times just before Christmas there, and they discovered that the family had no way of getting dinner on Christmas. Never mind a Christmas dinner, just no food. You know, and people always go, but how can people live like that? But it's a reality. That's happening in our local communities. There's people out there that have maybe got a house. They might even have a job, but it doesn't mean they've got enough money to provide for their kids. Doesn't mean they've got enough money for carpets. Doesn't mean they've got enough money for food every week. And particularly, as we know, when the schools are off and things like that, it's a real issue. So through some connections and thanks to, we get some help for the team at the Burnside Hotel, we were able to organise getting a Christmas dinner plated up and get it to that family on Christmas Day. And that's just through like a network of people that all want to do the same thing. So for me, the whole community aspect, the things that we're involved in, it's massive.
That's what I love about our community, because there was a Facebook post just before Christmas, and it was a girl that didn't realise that she'd get paid after Christmas, and she was relying on that money that was coming in before. And I seen all these people saying, but you should know, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, instead of asking that question, like, how have you got your money, blah, 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 why don't you step in and say, is there anything that I can do?
Totally.
So I stepped in. I mean, I've got a room sitting with all my grandkids' stuff that's waiting to just give away. So I says, what age are your kids? I'll give you whatever you need in here. And somebody else then jumped in and says, I can get you dinner, I can get you this. And it just takes like a few people to do that for other people to then join on and say, right, what do you need? And I find that people should do that rather than saying, how come you've not got that? You knew it was coming to Christmas, blah, 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 blah. It's like, don't ask questions. Why don't you come for another point and just say, look, I have this.
What do you need?
What do you need?
It's perspective though, innit? And it's very, very strange. A lot of people don't like seeing other people get help.
No, they don't. And I think like one of the charities that we work with quite closely, a big thing that they see from them is it's the reluctance for people to come forward. They're embarrassed. You know, to the extent, and again, that's down to society and how the world is. It's not right, but to the extent where they will go without a meal rather than ask for help. And like that blows my mind. But then, you know, I can see why with the pressures of social media and all these different things that are out there now that people need to deal with. I can genuinely understand why people do that.
You see the people who really stand out and things like that. Like even like there's a guy in the comments. There's a guy, I've not got any money to spare, but if you need it picked up, I've got a van there. So simple, really comes
amazing.
That's it.
And that was like 2 or 3 phone calls on Christmas Eve, and we got that sorted. Amazing. Like thanks to other people, everybody playing a small part.
That's it.
It's amazing, and that's why anything that we do locally, we try and do it locally. It's going to directly benefit the local community or people that need it in the local community. And we don't shout about everything that we do. There's some things we talk about and some things we don't talk about. But I always, for me as a person, as an individual and as a business, I always want to maintain those deep-rooted connections with every bit of the community. And that might be sponsoring the football team, and it might be doing something at Christmas, and it might be helping out with this, that, the next thing. But it's always something I want to do. And again, the rest of the team, they're the same. They want to help as much as they can as well.
There's people out there as well when it's completely down that business route, and it's like, I've never heard of somebody that sponsored a football team and made any money from it. That's the thing, that's what's different. It's not about that, it's to genuinely give, and you don't know, you can't help.
Totally.
With the awards that you've won and stuff there as well, as you said, it's not about that physical award to go and sit in a trophy cabinet. What that represents is the journey and what you've done throughout that period of time, which means so much more than a plaque with your name.
It's
100%. And I mean, that's why like getting that one for it was through like the Regen FX, the Youth Trust and all that stuff, we were totally overwhelmed. It was me and Peachy, who I know you know well as well, because he'd done a lot to support us, supporting the charity as well. And we just never, they invited us along for the night. We just thought it was really nice of them to go and experience their end of term award night, if you like. And I mean, that the purpose of that night was some of the kids who are coming from really difficult circumstances are giving up hundreds of hours of their own time to volunteer to help other kids. And I'm like, it's amazing to see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're going to that, just taking it all in. They shouted us up at the end of the night, like, what's going on here? But you're right, it's not about that. It's just about like being able to look back and see if we've made an impact and we've helped people. Yeah. And I always say that, like, about even the meetings at Men with Issues. If one person gets help that night, even just listening to what another guy said, job done. As far as I'm concerned, the meeting served its purpose. Yeah. It's amazing.
There was a woman on Facebook who was local as well, who for Christmas there, she put up once again, this is me doing something for somebody else that ends up coming back on me. But it was like bundles. So she put up a post and it was like, I'm going to do bundles at Christmas to help people out, give them something they deserve. For someone who's been through really tough times, or they just deserve an award for everything they've done throughout the year. Like a sort of gift, you know what I mean? For someone that's maybe just feeling a wee bit shit and needs a pick-me-up type thing. So she reached out to me and she's got, oh, by the way, I'm doing this, would you like involved? Because I know you kind of run a business community. Went, brilliant, I'll put in a free NLP session to one of the bundles. And then I get a message a few days ago, like, oh, by the way, you've won one of the bundles, you get nominated, and emails were sent in with your name on it. I was like, what? But once again, it's not the fact that like winning something as such, it's like the fact people have actually put their time in to go and write my name down and press send because of how much impact I've had on them. And it's that for me, that means more than anything, or any sort of cash prize.
100%,
give you, do you know what I mean? It's like, see, just knowing that somebody's put their time in because you've had that much an impact on them.
Yep. It's amazing.
So fulfilling.
It's amazing.
I want to ask you as well, obviously everything that you're doing just now, one thing I ask all my clients is why they do what they do, or why they want to get X result, or their purpose behind it. So why do you, Scott Munn, do what you do day to day?
So I think initially, earlier on in my life, it was just something that was always expected because of the family business. I used to get asked all the time, what would you do if you weren't doing this? And the answer is I've not got a clue. But as I've went through the years and kind of developing myself and my career and in life, I genuinely now fully understand the importance of what I do. And it honestly is. I sit here and I can honestly say for me, it's a complete privilege and an honour to be trusted with somebody's loved one and to deliver whatever that family need. And I really do understand that now. And I will hold my hands up and say I didn't always. Earlier on in my career, I didn't. Did I think I would be doing it and have my own business? Probably not. Did I think it was something I would do for a wee while and then go and do something else? Aye, probably. But I really do understand the importance of that, and that's what drives me every single day. So no matter how little the impact may be, me having an impact on that situation is what makes me do what I want to do. It's what makes me want to continuously improve both myself and the business and do better every single time. 100%.
For you then, is that the thing that's also your personal why too? Does that give you
definitely 100%? And then if I just want to make my kids proud. You know, for me, that's a big driver. So if they might not want to go into the family business, they might choose to do something completely different, and there'll be no pressure. I should say as well, there was no pressure on me to do that. Like, it wasn't like I was told you're definitely going to do that. It was just that I kind of made the assumption myself that because it's what everybody done before, I would do the same thing. But there's no pressure on my kids to do that. But if they, and I don't mean be proud of like having a nice big business and any of those material things that might come with that later in life once you get to a certain place. I mean, just be proud of the legacy, you know, being part of the community and being somebody that people know in that worst possible time. I'm the only person they think of. That's something I do. I take it honestly so seriously, and it means everything to me to be able to do that.
To leave a legacy is so important.
100%.
Amazing.
100%.
A lot of people say about the materialistic things as well. And people do go about that the wrong way. I get that, but for me, it's that, as I said with the award and the plaque, it's the journey and it's the sense of achievement up towards that.
100%.
Someone sets out for something to buy materialistic. It's not to show that they've got the materialistic thing. It's more personal and listen to them.
100%.
I've done that because I've done this, and this.
Setting the goal and achieving it, whatever that is.
Absolutely.
You know.
So that's incredible. And 100% mate, you'll make your kids proud, your family.
I appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
People do really respect you. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen as well, But I'm starting up Beyond Brotherhood, so I'm going to put this in here for any guys that are obviously listening to.
Amazing.
Another local coach, something I was going to have a chat to you about. But reason I'm bringing it up here, it's basically going to be a men's mental health organisation with a monthly experience. So once a month we'll get together for more experience. I know Mad Men do the meetings.
Yep.
And I actually had a guy message like, oh, by the way, I'm really interested in joining. So over the last couple of days, mate, we've nearly 25 members.
Amazing.
Obviously completely free. We'll put on food and stuff for them.
Brilliant.
But the guy is only going to be monthly. Said, because it's the experience monthly, but listen, I know a place if you need the meetings weekly and pass them on. So
amazing.
That's just all linking all them in together. Do you know what I mean?
So it's vital, and that's like where you'll probably have people at your door for that you know can have a place for us as well and maybe needed. And I think we say to people all the time within the group, people that really need the help, coming to a meeting once or twice a week sometimes isn't enough. There's other things that you need to do. That journey and the working on yourself, it continues beyond that. And we try and have, you know, we've had the retreat and stuff like that. It was a big success earlier this year. Massive. Plans to do a couple next year at least. But to have something like that and working in synergy and a bit of partnership, it can only lead to good things in my opinion.
Absolutely. So guys, how do we find you if you're someone that's struggling with the mental health? How do we find you guys?
Sure. So we're on Instagram, Facebook, m.w.i_men with issues. So you can, if anybody's ever looking to message either one of the pages, you'll always get somebody coming back to you. And the best thing that I would say to anybody that's struggling, fearful, doubtful of coming to a meeting, just come. It's really hard to come through the door for the first time. Everybody that's came and really been in a bit of turmoil says that. But then the minute they come in, you know, they feel at ease, they feel that they're in the right place. And we always stress to people are worried about having to open up and speak. You don't need to do that. We get guys that come for months and don't say a word, and then eventually the time will come when they're ready to open up.
I see that no expectation thing, no judgment, it's massive.
100%.
And for Beyond Brotherhood, obviously it's very new as well, so it's Beyond Brotherhood UK on Instagram, because we couldn't get the handle Beyond Brotherhood because it's some old account. So guys, don't post it since 2003.
Send them a message and buy off them.
So obviously it's very new. The first experience is going to be in the 11th. It's going to be strength training. We're going to have a cold water challenge. We'll be doing hill walks in the future. We're also getting a guy in I know very well, Paul, for breathwork sessions. I'll be doing some NLP. So
get you once a float.
Get
massage.
Guys together. Once a month, get guys together, have a food, have a chat. They don't need to take part in anything. They can just come along and just be part of the experience and have a conversation. And I think it's just a wee spin-off from going to a meeting and maybe something a bit more light-hearted, do you know what I mean? And then everybody that comes through the doors, we're not going to go and start another meeting up, but we'll pass them on. And that's so important about connections, because like the Men with Issues, absolutely incredible what's been built there. There's no point in me going and doing meetings and be like, I'd get a few people when there's an absolute thriving community that are absolutely incredible. So it's just putting something else in for them.
No, brilliant.
Want someone for my time as well, do you know what I mean?
I think it's really important to, like, as I say, that synergy and working together.
Definitely.
You know, and there'll be people that come to us that we can say, Beyond Brotherhood's maybe a place as well that you can work off both, do you know what I mean? And what's right for one person isn't going to be right for the next all the time, but it's like you say, just having that community and being able to signpost people in the different places, the fact that there's more places for them to go, the likes of the stuff that you're doing, it's amazing. You know, because in an ideal world, we'd love to have a meeting running every night of the week across the city. I think we would get an uptake for it, but it's a hard thing to do. The three of us are really busy with full-time jobs and families and all the rest of it. We'd love to get to that space eventually, but you doing what you're doing as well, Derek, can only lead to good things,
just making those connections, those collaborations, and then goes for you running a couple of meetings a week to then there'll be a third one in, but it's someone else that's running it, and then the same sort of guys go, and it's just passing them to all these different places, and more are coming up. There's a guy that kind of contacted as well. It's like, I've tried Andy's Man Club, just wasn't for me. I would like to try this. Went, great, mate. Well done for going there. Do you know what I mean? And trying it out.
100%.
Maybe this will work for you. If it doesn't, there's always somewhere else, and give them that future. Give them that extra bit of hope that they might be holding on to. You never know. It could be someone's last chance.
Totally.
Well, what they think is their last chance.
Totally. And I think that's the start of kind of reality. Sometimes we see people coming through the door that literally are quite open about where they've been in terms of the headspace and all, and they're basically like sometimes almost signed out. And it's quite daunting sometimes to see that, the start reality, somebody sitting in front of you that's basically
checked out
in that space where they're about to, you know. And I think, you know, we're not always the people to fix that. We always say we're men, not medics. You know, and it's important to remember that, but at the same time, you know, it's lived experience. It's like-minded people. We might not have the answers, but we know where to put you to get the answers if it's not us.
What I was so surprised about, I don't even know if surprised is the right word, but when I did come to the meetings, it was like, there's structure, right? And there's things that we speak about at the start. This is what you don't chat about, this is what we do, this is what it is.
Of course.
But see the power in that, inside that room, just by bringing humans together and talking. Nothing else to it. There's nothing magic. Do you know what I mean? You maybe have a speaker come every so often. I think they've even kind of died down in that now. Do you know what I mean? But I was like, this is incredible. The benefit this is having, the power that's in this room, the connection that's been made, and all it is chairs and a human body sitting on this chair. Yeah. Nothing else.
Totally.
And I was like, that's magic.
And that's what I say to people all the time. Like, you can't articulate. You've done a really good job of articulating that, but you can't really give a true reflection of what a meeting is until you go and experience it. And like, I would love to be able, I mean, you can't, we'd never go in, but like, see, to be able to record a meeting, you know, just to show maybe people that are reluctant, say like, this is what happens, because it's powerful stuff. It's amazing.
Before as well, you leave with your stomach killing you, just something, the laugh that you're having.
Totally.
People might think it's dead daunting, dead serious, you come up, just sit there.
And that's what we say to people, come in the good weeks as well. Don't just come when you're having a bad week. Come and tell everybody that you've had a good week. And we say that, and a lot of the boys do, and they'll maybe say, you know, I'm squatting, this has happened this week, this has happened, and I'm actually feeling really good. And it's important for people to hear that as well, that it's peaks and troughs, you're up and down. You might have been in a bad space, but you can get to a better space. And we want to share that as well.
Aye, 1,000,000%. I totally agree. Anything else that we want to touch on? Pretty much covered.
I think that's it, pretty much covered.
Came for.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate.
So listen, thanks very much for having us on, guys. Really appreciate it, honestly. And I think what you are doing is amazing. And even just creating a space to have these conversations, it's honestly so important. And it's like, I've watched every podcast so far, so would I relate to you know everything? No, but there's so much that I would, and that's all it takes is one thing that might incite the change or get somebody to go and start doing something a bit different, give themselves a better life. That's what it's all about.
It's like you read a book and you take that one line in the book and maybe highlight it and go, that's the thing I took from it. Like, you can pick up a book and only read half it, but you just got what you needed from it. It's just take what you need. You don't need to take everything.
No,
100%. Program as well. It's like, it might be overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff here, but we don't. You're not being gave it all and going go do what you're doing. It's like, take what you need.
Totally.
Give you just what you need.
No, definitely.
Take control of your health.
One last thing, just before we do wrap it up, is what's next for you? What's next for you, Scott? Your professional life.
I want to just keep growing the business as much as I can, but that's not because I want to be here, there and everywhere. It's just because I feel like what we've been able to do in the time that we've been caring for families under my own name anyway has been really special. So I want to extend that offering. So currently looking for a new site as well, to extend the business maybe into different areas, because as I say, I feel that it's beyond our local community. You know, there's other people out there that maybe need that support. And I think just keep you know, adapting with the times and things that change, staying at the forefront of what we do, and just try to focus on being the best we possibly can for every family that comes through the door, and just keep building it like that. That's what I want to do, and keep doing that.
Any big personal goals for you, challenges over the next year?
Nah, get healthier next year, definitely. Back in the bike. Used to do a bit of cycling, but I've really not done any for about 6 months. So after the new year, I want to try and maybe catch up with you a bit, and dial down a wee bit. Dial down a bit and get a bit healthier. But apart from that, and just probably keep working on like the kind of work-life balance, which I think is something that I've probably struggled with over the past few years. I suppose MD setting up a business, especially like our business being 24 hours, just making sure I get the most out of the moments I have at home with the family and all that stuff. I want to keep building on that as well. So
for what you've achieved, even just in the last 6 months, 2024, mate, so you get into 2025 with like that solid ground that you built there on the community side as well. I think it's going to be a massive year, mate, not just for you but for the full of the community. They come together, and I think more people are starting to realise how if one person does one thing, you're just joining a group of other people that's doing one thing.
Totally.
And if everybody does one thing, like, it's huge.
It makes a big difference.
Definitely. You know what I mean? It's not somebody having to do everything.
No, definitely.
Just putting in your word or putting in that wee bit of input. Just even getting back to that example as well. It's like, I've not got this, but I can give this.
Yeah,
or I can give this wee bit of time.
And I think that's the thing as well, never underestimating your time. You know what I mean? Even if it's giving somebody half an hour in an ear, like, it might make the difference. You know what I mean?
Like you done it with me a few weeks ago, mate. 25 minutes on the phone. I went, that was phenomenal.
Sometimes that's what you need, though. Do you know what I mean? And again, the flip side of that is I'm viewing myself, so I'm looking at my situation. Things are fine now, but I'm thinking like everything that you were dealing with in that moment, and you're still being you. You're still being your usual self. So, and I don't just mean in the professional capacity, but you're still being the right person. You're still doing right by yourself, right by the rest of your family. And I'm like, so I kind of look at that and go, wow, man, fair play. I took for that as well. So I might have been, you might have been kind of ranting to me, but at the same time, like I'm taking a lot from that. And again, it's back to that piece about just opening up and having the conversation.
Yeah.
Somebody in here as well.
Aye,
Yeah.
check in on your mates.
Back special. You just had
No,
to listen to me. And that's exactly
totally.
what you done, mate. And you gave some insight and wisdom there as well, which
Aye.
is incredible. But it's like, what was I going to say there? Have you ever like been in a situation where you've done something for someone, you've said something that's been very, very small, and they've went, oh my God, that's seriously appreciated.
Aye.
It's been massive
Yeah.
for me. And that's what it is. It's like you might find something and it's been this small thing that you've done, but to someone else it's huge for them, and it might be the thing they needed that day.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Aye.
I get a couple of messages off some of the guys for the group at Christmas. And I mean, I'm like, because of the business and stuff, like Kieran probably puts in the most time. With a lot of the guys on a one-on-one basis, he's there for a lot of people all the time. He probably gives too much of himself sometimes, do you know what I mean? That's just the type of person that he is. Danny's got, a different job. He runs a business as well, so he's got a bit less time, but still, again, gives up a huge amount of his own time and he's there for people. But a couple of the guys messaged me over Christmas just to thank me for little snippets of conversations that we'd had, and I didn't really remember those moments. I did when they spoke to me about it, and it was actually really overwhelming for me to see the impact that me just having a 5-minute conversation with somebody had to the point where, like, one of them was like 8 months ago, and a guy texted me at Christmas saying, Merry Christmas, hope you and the family have a great time. I just want to say, do you remember that meeting? And I did, when he said to me, I remembered it, and I went, yeah. And he said, well, see that conversation you had with me? I've used that every single day for the past 8 months. And I was like really blown away by that, and I'm like, wow, that's when you maybe do underestimate the power of being that person sometimes.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you very much, mate.
No, thanks for having us on, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you leave a 5-star rating and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. It's been a pleasure, and please let us know your biggest takeaways in the comments below or drop us a wee message. You can find us at the links just below the podcast. Speak soon.